I was a captain for quite a few years, well, only two, and then I was promoted to major, but the majority didn't take place till I received my discharge, simply because there was my home state was offering gratuities for their boys and girls in the service, and they said that you're a captain now, we'd like to have you keep that, and the government said okay. And then as soon as I graduated again, then they'd give me the majority back. They were very accommodating to us boys coming back from overseas. That's the one thing that could make me cry. I came back in the Queen Mary. When we looked, the big statue. What's the big statue? I remember.
Statue of Liberty.
Statue of Liberty. I don't think there's a dry eye on the ship. I think some of us have been there about overseas 2 years, and it was awfully nice to get back to your home and your family and your new daughter and all the nice things. 22 years, almost 23. I took military training in college, and then the war broke out, and it became a big shortage of pilots, as the history books will tell us. And so they offered a flying operation for any student that wanted to entertain the idea or could pass the physical and so forth. I was in the ROTC, so I automatically got the commission as a second lieutenant when I graduated. I lived in North Dakota, in a little town in the farming community. We once in a while we'd see an airplane, but I fell in love with it. And then I looked at a silent movie, and I was trying to remember it. Oh, the Dawn Patrol. And I was 8, 9 years old when I saw that, and from that day on, I always wanted to fly. And then when I was a senior in college, government offered the opportunity to get a license. That's how I did it, through the college. After graduated from college and so forth, I immediately went into the service, and I had a commission as a second lieutenant in the ground forces. While in the ground forces and training at Fort Benning, Georgia, the edict came through from the government stipulating anyone who would like to join the Air Corps and could pass the physicals, etc., please sign up. So I signed up. And after 2-3 months after that, I received notification that, yes, I was selected for Air Force training and to proceed to someplace down south to follow through. And I was married at that time, and so my wife and I headed for the air training. You know, it was the old single-engine airplane that they used in the 30s, 40s. I forgot the name, but it was single-engine, open cockpit. I think it had 150, 200 horsepower. I've forgotten the details of it, but it was a fun airplane to fly. And as I recall, the instructor sat in the back cockpit and the student sat in the front. It was a wonderful experience for a farm kid from North Dakota. I was sent to the second group of airplanes, and this time it was more powerful airplanes. But anyway, we were giving more advanced installments as it went on. And again, by that time I had fallen in love with flying, and I couldn't, even a bad day was always a good day. I graduated from secondary, or whatever they call it, and we were asked what segment of the airport would we like to join. And I heard of one that was a transport division, and I thought, oh, excuse the term, goody gumdrop. I can get a chance I can get in the transport division. I can fly, and I'm overseas, but I'll be going back and forth once in a while. I could see my wife and the new baby and all the nice things. So that's where I went from that secondary into to the advance, and that's where the first day there they showed us the DC-3. When we first saw it, we were a little bit disillusioned because we heard about the Boeings and some that 2-3 mile, 100 miles an hour, and here's a transport plane that not quite so delightful, but the instructors and so forth said, you learn to love it, and they were right. To this day, my favorite airplane is that DC-3. I'll never forget it. I saw it many times where it saved lives. Well, the sounds are paramount, you know. It's the modern sound of the modern airplane. The radial engine is a wonderful, wonderful sound. When you advance those throttles, you could hear that, or when you're sitting outside and you hear one take off. And it's a thrilling sound to me. In 1943, or early 1944, I joined a unit, and the unit was transport unit. They said, they explained to us that hauled gonna haul paratroopers and ammunition and people and gasoline and fuel and all that, and people. I was over in England, and that was a real thrill for a kid from North Dakota, you know, to go to a foreign country. And the trip over was fantastic. We flew the airplanes over. That we flew after that. Kept the same airplane as long as I stayed there, the year or a year and a half I stayed over there in Europe. We left, we're in a little town, Nebraska, for our learning how to fly as a unit, and I joined the unit, that's where it was. And then we were notified that we're going to go, had to go to back to the East Coast to a place where they fabricated this airplane that we're going to fly. And they told us that it was a DC-3. And so we were a bunch of kids. I was 22 or something like that. And just out of college about a year ago, just got married and all that. So we were thrilled. However, I wasn't too excited about going to a cargo plane because I had great ideas that some of the big airplanes, Boeings and so forth, they could go 300-400 miles an hour, and oh my, activities and all that. And I thought, flying a transport, you don't even have a pistol to save yourself. Normally we had 9 airplanes in the squadron, but I think we picked up about 13. And we were told that we couldn't fly the northern route because it's winter time, and we were going to go the southern route. So we went down to the south of Florida and island hopped quite a bit, and they'd always ask us, the military people, they said, watch for submarines and be sure you report them when you get here. Well, when we got there, I think every one of the airplanes had 1 or 2 submarines they saw, because we found out later that they're big black rocks in the ocean, and later on they told us that they hadn't seen a submarine for about 2-3 years, and they laughed about it. And of course we laughed about it because we were not very smart. So then after that we ended up in Belém, Brazil. There's something wrong with the airplane that had to be adjusted or something. But the briefing that we had went along this way. They said, gentlemen, you're going to be flying over water. And gentlemen, you have been used to when your tanks get down to a quarter and so forth, you switch tanks. Let me tell you about the tanks. They said, you don't switch a tank. Yeah, did you hear that? You don't switch tanks when that needle is going like that. You switch tanks when that needle sits right there. And just, well, the first time that stopped and the engine started to miss, one guy almost had a heart attack, and he never has forgotten it. They wanted us to use every drop of gasoline in those tanks, those wing tanks, before we stitched the one in the cabin, because that extra 20, 30 gallons would save it. But anyway, this little island was this, we saw from start to finish, you could see the whole island, and we landed there, and it was pure, utterly desolation. But thank God we made it. That little island that we stopped in was the middle of the South Atlantic, between South Brazil and Africa. The next day we were in Africa. And we just got to Africa, and we landed at this field that had been hewn out of the trees, out of the forest. The trees all had been cut down, but they did have a paved runway, and that's about all there was, and a few huts and so forth. And that was gasoline, things like that. But outside that, it was desolation personified. And that night, when we went to bed, the drums started. Now remember, this is nigh on to 90 years ago, and those natives were talking to each other, and it was eerie. In a foreign country, and away from everybody, and very few people, but I always remember it. And unfortunately, out of the 13 planes, one of our planes, remember, we were all pretty new pilots. This guy came in and had an engine problem out in the ocean. Came in to make a landing, and he overshot the field. And then he poured the power. Oh, I think they had one engine acting up. He poured the gas to it, and it didn't go up. And they crashed, and every one of them was killed. But you know, as sad and as horrible as that was, when we got to England and got busy, it shook us up. But it was not everlasting. Not everlasting. We accepted it, you know. Greenwich, I think, is quite close to Paris. We were newcomers, you know. We were kids up there enjoying a new country, and later on, after we'd been there, heavy bombardment started with our bombers, and the heavy bombers were here, we were here, and Europe was here. So every night, the English bombers would go over the top of our bunks, and that would wake us up. It would wait the time, and then the next morning, the USA bombers would go. We knew that there was a battle coming. We knew that Europe was going to be invaded, and we knew that we felt sure that we were going to be involved. But we trained not a few hours a day, but night and day, just train. We were busy. We knew something was going to happen. It was rumbled. We knew the way the impetus was heavy training. We knew they were getting ready, and we towed ladder. We did other flights, training flights, and we were given a lot of educational what happens on invasions and so forth. And everybody knew there was an invasion coming, and we knew it. We didn't know whether we'd be on it or not. We were too busy. We flew. We trained. And when you're busy all the time, you don't have much time to be afraid. And secondly, when you're damn tired at night, you go to bed. Yes, I do. I don't know how long I'll live, but what I do with that last day, and I'll think of it too. We're scheduled to go, and we're in the field now that we're ready to take off next morning for the invasion. But about 8, 9 o'clock, it was canceled. And we didn't know why. But the next night, same thing happened, and there was no cancellation, so we took off. Now, I showed this to my friend here yesterday, I think, that England was here, France was here. When we flew that night, the second day, 2 days after we left England, we were ordered to go on the invasion, and not the towed gliders. We're going to haul paratroopers, and as I recall, somewhere between 12 and 14 paratroopers. And at that time, to pick them up, we were at another field, and while we're there, Eisenhower came, and he said, "Gentlemen," he says, "you know, today's been canceled, but tomorrow morning you go." And he talked to us for about 15 minutes. We knew the weather was bad the day before. We knew the weather was going to be bad. This is Britain. This is France. When we took off, remember this one, this is France over here. We didn't go direct to France. We went over here. We went way over here, come over here, come in the back way, which made a lot of sense. The only thing is the Germans knew exactly what we were going to do. The weather was horrible. I was a wingman. I was here. The flight leader was here, so three of us, and the boss up front. I was here. When the weather turned bad, there no lights, no exhaust was covered. I mean, it was no radio silence, everything, the stripes. When the weather was so bad, I couldn't see this airplane. So I did the only thing I could do. We couldn't talk to anybody, radio silence. So I just peeled off like that. Get away from that formation because there's 2 other planes there. And now the co-pilot, we're both kind of new, very new kids. We were lost in the heavy clouds and so forth. So I said to the co-pilot, I said, "Grab a map, head us to England." And besides that, I knew England was over here, so I aimed at where I thought England was. And now I'm flying instruments and heading towards where I thought England was. And the dawn was coming up, just starting to show light. And he nudged me like this. And he said, "Look down." I looked down, hell, we're over the channel. Ship after ship after ship. In fact, the reports later on said that there were 5,000 ships nose to bow, going across that channel. And we're down low. We're only down about 10, 1,100 feet. And the damn big old guns were starting to go like this. They didn't, we had stripes added to there. If I didn't have them before, they say, well, they'll say the stripes. But I'm not so sure whether they did or not. But I did. I turned on the lights. I throttled back. I dropped the flags. I slowed down and everything else. And then the guns stopped turning. But it was unbelievable. In fact is, I thought, newly married man, goodbye, baby. This is it. But then the ships, we got away from them, and we knew pretty well where England was now because we were over land, flew a little farther, got nice clear weather, and waited a little while and went in and landed. And you know, the first thing we did, went to bed. It was a Holland invasion, And Holland Division was very rugged on us. When we saw our friend with black smoke coming out, we saw 1, 2, 3 parachutes, and we knew there was 4 in the airplane, and we both, the co-pilot and I both said, "Jump, John, get the hell out of there, please, John." But he couldn't. And going up the companionway on a DC-3 that's down like this, and he was the pilot, and I suppose the nose went down farther, and he probably just couldn't get up there with, remember, he's got a heavy parachute on his back too, or on his butt, one or the other. He's got to get up there and get out, and he didn't do it. It was crushing. I can't. On the deepest family feeling I've ever had in my life. I just can't. I don't think there's a dry, I came back in the Queen Mary, and I don't think there's a dry eye on that boat. The Battle of the Bulge was on, and hindsight tells us we were caught with our pants down. Prevailing thought on the part of the Americans, at least the rank and file, was that the war was over. The the Germans had been whipped. And people, after the fact, kept hearing engines on the distance, airplane engines. But anyway, this surprise attack came, the Battle of the Bulge, and we were caught with our pants down, really and bad. We were getting booted and kicked and bloodied right to the hilt, and we were losing it. I had 4 planes. I was in headquarters, and I was in charge of the flight of the group of scheduling and so forth. Kind of the acting squadron commander, if you please. Acting, and I wasn't the squadron commander. But anyway, we're in the shack there at Madrid. No, like a little town in France. And his call came in from Shafe. "How many planes you got?" And I said 3. And when they called every day, and they said, "You got pilots?" And I said, "No, but we can cover them." And they said, "Well, get those planes over to British tomorrow, and too late today, and pick up wounded, take them back to Brussels or near Brussels, wherever it is, Battle of the Bulge, and drop the troops off and load up with wounded and get them wounded back to England." So I said, "Yes, sir," and that's the only guy that could fly that 3rd plane is me. And as far as navigator, only had 1. That was, he rode with me because I was in charge of the flight. So we made that trip, and word came back that you got to take a 2nd trip too. And now it's about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. They told me before, a couple hours before 4 o'clock, but at 4 o'clock we're back at this Battle of the Bulge, and all these wounded are spread out on the grass, waiting to get on board. But I heard that the weather in England was bad. And somewhere I got on a telephone or something, and they said, "England is shut in. Anyway, I got no flights in there. Now, this was not the chief. This was somebody else that gave us that information. So I would look at all these wounded, and I had the commandant of all these wounded, and I said, it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon. This is December, whatever it is. It's going to get dark early, and I'm not going to go. I said, "I'm not going to take them." They said, "Well, what are you doing something bad?" I said, "No, the weather is such that I just can't risk those 60 guys sitting out there in the ground bleeding, some of them." And they said, well, you got to. We don't have any place to go. We can't take them back to the war. And they said, we got to. So old Dad said, well, you're not going according to Hoyle. You're not paying attention to rules and regulations. You shouldn't do it. I said, load them up. So we take off. Now it's about 5 o'clock, and it's in the wintertime. And the first half of the trip is all right, except the crew chief came up and tapped me on the shoulder, and our seats spin, you know. And I said, well, what's up? He said, well, we got one GI back there that screams. He's just screaming. And he said the other 12, 13 guys are ill. They've been shot, and they can't take it. And I said, well, send the corpsman up here. And the corpsman, I said, what are we doing? He said, well, I've given this boy all the shots he can get. And I said, corpsman, you better give him another shot. He said, that will kill him. This is halfway there. So I'm looking ahead, and I see that black cloud over there. And I said, now what do I do? Now, let me give you a little aside right now. We were told English weather is horrible, and it's very changeable. And they said, if you get caught in that storm and can't find a place to land, head that airplane out to sea and jump. And I guess some of them guys that did it. But, you know, I couldn't do that. There was no heading out to sea with 60 wounded dying. And if I just had one airplane, I would have been able to do things with it. But when you have 3 airplanes, you can't do it. So we kept on, and I asked the navigator, sitting right behind me, you know what the seat is, and I said, give us a heading to fire Ardell. He couldn't do it or something, and I said, oh, never mind, we're going to do something else. And right then and there, the clouds broke. They didn't broke, but we were coming 120 miles an hour, and we hit an open spot, and the lights were on. Oh, I knew it was an airplane. So I didn't contact the other pilot. I just dove mine. And those guys were being right behind me. It landed, and we pulled up to the administration office. And the guy came out, I had the engine idling. He said, you can't stay overnight. He said, this airport is empty. He said, I was just testing the lights. And I said, well, thanks a lot, Buster, but you're going to have 64 guests here. And they got this little town, they got the clergyman, they got the doctors, one doctor, whatever they had, and they brought out coffee. And by midnight, they'd come in, and they'd taken that last guy off the airplane, off the 3 airplanes. And the 3 of us went in the empty shells of the administration buildings, and I don't know about the other guys, but I slept on a pool table. Townsman came over, or somebody came over, and asked for the guy in charge, and that was me. And he said, want you on the telephone or something? And the doctor of the hospital, he said, well, you won't believe this, but every one of those guys are still alive. I wasn't thinking about myself. Naturally, I wanted to live too, because I had a baby, and my wife took care of that. Had the baby, and I had a wife. But I wasn't even thinking, I was just thinking those 60 wounded people, 60 bodies, you know, crashed on the rock somewhere. And I don't think you think about that. You just think, I gotta get through, I gotta do it. And maybe that's depending on your faith, and maybe that message gets taken. We hope so.